Actually, if you look at my whole body of work, cows haven't made up all that much, but I love painting cows. And people think of me when they see a cow, which is not always a good thing. I was born in Port Maitland, and I was born into a mixed marriage where my mother was Catholic. She was from Gilbert's Cove, and my father was part of a Protestant family. So I grew up going to school in a village that's predominantly Protestant, which made me feel a little bit different, even though for the most part everybody was really nice. There was the odd time that somebody wasn't. But it does sort of stick with you, and it has made its way into my work because it always kind of baffled me, the whole idea of what difference it would make, what route you took to. I was very religious when I grew up, not religious as in specifically Catholic religion, but I took my religion very seriously when I was young. And I ended up leaving the Catholic Church when I was 18. And have chosen to be unaffiliated ever since then. I started really young. My mother had painted when she was younger, and she gave me her set of paints because with 5 kids she didn't have time to do that. My teacher said one day that I was going to have a hard time deciding whether to be a painter or a writer. And she used to tease me about this later in life, that apparently without batting an eye, I said, oh no, I'm going to write and illustrate my own books. The impulse for both of them were there then. I kept it pretty much to myself. I always used to like being alone, but I was always content to amuse myself, never needed to have another kid around. And I think a lot of artists are like that. You find it difficult to have too many people around all the time. So I've lived alone for a good part of the last 20 years. I was married for 10 years in the middle of that. He had his own house just up the road, and he had property in Germany because he was German. We would be together a certain amount, and he would go back to Germany for a month or so by himself. And then I would go in the winter for about 3 or 4 months. And then I'd come back here, and a month later he would come back. And that worked for me. And right now I have a lovely relationship in which he has his own house. And we see one another. And when we do see one another, we're present. It's our time together. At one point when I was probably around 12 or 13, maybe I was older because I was going to high school, my mother signed me up for art lessons she was Thea Batworth, Thea Witten, she went by both names. She and another woman were giving art lessons. And my sister and I went to them every Saturday. And I guess they saw potential. At one point, they called me into the little office. They suggested that I should consider NASCAD and try to get a scholarship and so on. And the one piece of advice that they gave me that I didn't follow was they said, if you want to be an artist, don't get married. And I didn't follow that. I got married the first time at 18, and I could see what they were trying to tell me. Because when you start having children, it is more difficult to pursue something like painting. I never did get to go to NASCAD. At the time that I would have gone right after high school, my parents were going through a divorce, and I just didn't know how to make it happen. I did take some lessons through night school from the College of Art in Halifax when I was living there. Some workshops when they came to Yarmouth doing weekend workshops. So I had the odd bit of training, but mostly I just had the attitude that everything that was taught had to be figured out at one point or another, and I just figured as much as I could. I like learning. I like experimenting with something new. And that's kind of my downfall, that as soon as I figure something out and get good at it, then my attention drifts. and I start wanting to play with something else. So I've been all over the place. And when people walk into my studio and they see work that's left over from different shows I've had here and there, they'll say it looks like it's the work of half a dozen artists, but it's just different phases that I've gone through. One of the first shows I had was historical paintings of Yarmouth, and I love architecture. I love old houses in particular. And so I was really fascinated with the beautiful architecture around the turn of the century, but also the ships in the harbor. If I could time travel, I would go back to the turn of the century and just give me a day and I'd just walk around Yarmouth. It's kind of random, the things that sent me off in a certain direction. For example, probably the second main show that I had was the Giving Back the Apple one. That one came about because I had a dream where I was at the Ark and Vivian Frost, who was the president at the time, I dreamed that she was going through my portfolio and that she pulled out all these drawings that she was excited about and was making a fuss over them. I didn't recognize the drawings, I hadn't done them. And I thought, of all the things in my portfolio, why is she so taken with these? After I woke up, I had that feeling of, darn, And then I thought, well, it was my dream. I can do the drawings. So I did them. And the whole point of the drawings was that sometimes one line can describe two different things. In art, when you have positive and negative space, the negative space is the kind of empty space that's all around the subject. And in this dream, the negative space was given as much importance as the positive space. It was body parts and pieces of fruit. They shared a line. And so in relation to one another, neither was positive or negative. I was in Florida at the time. The day before the dream, we had been at the home of my husband's stepsister, and it was like the Garden of Eden. It was just fabulous, the garden. So I did all these drawings, and a few months later, I was approached by the Black Duck in Lunenburg, asking if I wanted to have a show. My first response was, no, I can't, because I was having one in Mahone Bay at the time at Mimi's, and I didn't have enough work to do two at the same time. And then I thought about it, and I thought, well, I could turn these drawings into paintings. I did fairly quickly put together a show for Lunenburg. That was the Giving Back the Apple show, which was playing with the whole idea of Eve in the Garden of Eden. I like to have humor in my work, in painting and writing. Even if I'm dealing with something that is a very serious topic. I needed a cover design for my book, Bird Shadows. I had the two-part painting from my Giving Back the Apple series hanging in my kitchen. There's something about looking at the expression on that face that I enjoyed, because it seemed to be just saying whatever. So I decided that that face, that expression, would maybe work on the cover of my Bird Shadows. So I put a bird on her head instead of the apple, and had a little bit of shadow down over her forehead. And while I was in the process of painting her face, it just felt very soothing to be doing that. And I had a lot of stuff going on in my life at the time. It was just helpful. When I finished painting the one with the bird, I did another one. I think the second one may have been the one with the cat on her head. And I liked that, so then I did another one and just played with finding reasons to paint that face. And it was not about the finished product of what, because nobody really wants these paintings, but it was more a therapy. It was more what the process did for me than the product in the end.
Do you find writing allows you to express yourself in a way that painting doesn't? Or are you...
Yeah, I think better when I'm writing things down. It's a whole different process than if you're just sitting and thinking about something. I explore ideas more. I process them. With painting, I also like to have ideas that I'm playing with, but it is different. I'm playing a little more. My novel, Bird Shadows, is about misogyny, but it's also about an attempt to describe what it's like to be an artist. The whole idea of being an artist is you're not so much a follower as somebody that kind of makes their own path, finds their own way. With crafts, somebody else has worked out the idea and you're replicating it a little bit more. But with art, you're used to having to think your way through. So when it comes to religion, I felt like I was sometimes misunderstood, that because I chose to not be affiliated with a religion, that there was a void. And in reality, I probably spend more time thinking about such things than the average person that goes to church. It's not because there's a void, it's just because I'm shaping my own sense of what this is all about based on my life experiences and things I'm exposed to through writing and so on. In the end, I'm so impressed by the beauty in the world and can't believe that any creator or source would send people to hell for eternity just because they didn't sign up for. So there's no place in my thinking for that. A few years ago, I had a show in Halifax at Swoon Fine Arts, and it was called Thou Shalt Not. And sometimes people ask me, where did you get these crazy ideas for the direction your work goes in? And sometimes I have no idea. I'm influenced by different things that come into my life, and then suddenly they kind of coalesce into the idea. But my husband Dieter had a small collection of Bibles. He wasn't a religious man, but he was interested in the variety of Bibles, and they were old Bibles and there were different ones and so on. And he was a book and magazine editor and a writer. So this interested him, and he had one called the Hunterwasser Bible, and it was a limited edition by an Austrian artist, and it was illustrated in abstract paintings. It kind of blew my mind that you could do that you could illustrate a Bible like that. It was a very valuable Bible. I think that planted the seed of, oh, that's interesting. There used to be cows across the river from my house, and they were part of my view. So at some point, the idea to take the Bible and replace the word thou with the word cow made sense. What I'm saying is it's been translated and interpreted, and the point of it was to show that it only takes one word. You only have to change one word, and the entire meaning is changed. In cases where people will take a part of the Bible to justify something which most good people would recognize was not a good thing to try to justify. If your gut feeling is, that doesn't seem like what Jesus would want me to do, you're probably right. So you only have to change one word. I had a little fun with it. Would like to do more along that line someday, but then I have more ideas always than I can ever realize.
The series you described as scribbling and doodling.
That was a form of therapy. That was when the restaurant that I was involved in, my daughter's restaurant, Gaia, was going through pains of trying to stay open and not being able to. It was just such a painful time that I started doing these doodles as a way of soothing myself, just a way of coping.
Right.
It wasn't because the doodles were any great pieces of art. It was just sometimes the art is all about needing to focus your mind away from things that are going on and onto the simplicity of the line, and just something to focus on. And for me, that's what this old house, I've been working on this old house for 20 years.
Right.
And there are so many things in life that you have no control over, that you can't do anything about. So you pick something you can do something about. And you get the little bit of satisfaction from taking something and making it better. And if that's all that you have control over, well then, that's what you do.